Please be joined this time by Coach Thomas McCarter at Alexander, not too far from one of my old stomping grounds in Douglasville. And Coach, thanks for joining me.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, so Coach, you're going to talk about some problem solving to overcome limitations, man. This the kind of topics that I really enjoy doing. I mean that. Like I feel like they're underutilized special teams, street conditioning, especially the high school version. So really excited to hear what you got to say, man. Let me get out of the way and take it away.
Absolutely. Let me make sure that you can see the screen. All right, it's not showing my notes on there, is it? Just the full screen.
No, it's showing the notes too, I think.
Okay. Let me. Sorry. Let me try
No,
that
that's
again
fine.
here. There we go. All right. Present full screen. There we go.
There
All
you
right.
go.
All right. I
There you go.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Well, again, my name is Thomas McCarter. I'm the strength and conditioning coordinator, linebackers coach at Alexander. This is my second year over there. And kind of what I was wanting to go through tonight was helping some coaches that might need to, I guess, bridge the gap between, some things that I guess are trending or things that maybe you see at a clinic or you research yourself, whatever it might be, and better be able to apply it to your team. You know, I kind of draw the comparison to football coaches or like a position coach. Like for me, being a linebackers coach, going to a clinic and or going to watch a practice or whatever it might be, and seeing a drill that I might really like, something that I think is a really good idea that maybe a college is doing, and I think it would be, I think it's great. But as far as being able to apply it for myself, like it might not make a whole lot of sense because I don't have a GA helping me. I don't have, two student assistants. And so I think sometimes strength coaches can kind of fall into that same trap, and not actually kind of thinking through, how is this actually going to um, apply to my team and my situation? Because, um, you know, just like, what you can do scheme wise or what you can do in practice, depends on your kids. A lot of, strength and conditioning depends on your space, depends on your time, things like that, which we'll get into. So those are kind of the questions that, I think that you kind of have to ask yourself, or how can I apply this that I've seen or I found? What's this going to look like for us? And does it make sense? The other part, that kind of made me want to do this um, I've been at three different schools, and they've all been different sizes, different demographically, socioeconomically, all that. But all three have had a few things in common. They've either had zero or a limited budget for the weight room, at least initially, or if there was a budget there or there was potential for a budget, investing in the weight room was not necessarily a high priority, at least initially. So that's kind of who I'm hopefully going to be able to help tonight. So moving forward here, kind of the three common limitations that you're going to have in high school strength conditioning are going to be time. Number one, even if you're blessed to have a lot of time, you still feel like you don't have enough. And that is me. I'm guilty of that since we have 90-minute periods, and I still sometimes go too long. But I've also been in situations where you have 50-minute periods and you better be really efficient. You better, make sure you have a good plan to have your kids be able to get everything that you need done, especially when you're factoring in the time to change in and change out at the beginning of the period. And then, even throughout the year, there might be some times where, you're spending part of the period for your kids to watch film. So it's not even that much time. Like I said, at the beginning, there's just a finite amount of time to touch on a lot of different physical qualities that you need to be able to develop in football players. And especially nowadays with kids not playing multiple sports as much as they used to, not just simply playing as much as they used to. It's very easy to feel like there's just not enough time to get everything in that you want. The next big thing would be your space and equipment. So that's really the number one thing that's going to dictate what your training program is going to look like, in my opinion. You can, be all about a certain training program, a certain system, whatever it might be, but it might just not make sense for what you have. So that could be a lack of racks, a lack of bars, dumbbells, square footage, not having a turf area, whatever it might be. And then the last one here, lack of technology, that is definitely something that has, I guess, exploded in high school strength and conditioning probably the last 5 to 10 years. So that could be, timing systems, VBT, a jump matter sensor, and all those things are great tools for fostering competition and motivating athletes. But if you don't have one, that doesn't mean that you still can't accomplish some of the benefits for it. That doesn't mean that you can't still get the benefit of driving competition, of driving intent in your athletes as well. And then also, providing them with some benchmarks and some things to track. So those are kind of the 3 areas we're going to look at. So first off, this is just what our space looks like. So fortunately, we had our weight room redone by the school district about this time last year, where we have 16 double-sided racks. We've got plenty of barbells. We've got adjustable dumbbells, power blocks at each rack. So we can do pretty much everything that we could possibly want to do in our weight room. We've got lots of space. But our limitation is that you can see the closest turf area for us is way down there. It's a haul for us to get down there. And so to be able to have kids go to the field and come back all the way up that hill just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for us to do within the same session. So with that said, we're on the top floor of our basketball coliseum. And so we have a track that goes around it. And then obviously you've got the court underneath. So there's kind of another view where you've got about 30-ish yards of space on each side of that track where it's straight that we can utilize and that we utilize a lot. And so when I'm going through some of these ideas or examples for us, that's kind of what it will be looking like. But I'll, give some other potential options. So getting into the first category here when we're talking about being limited on time. So if you're in a situation like I have been before where you only have 50-minute class periods and realistically it's 35 to 40 minutes to train, what I would do is I would perform 2 trisets every single day that you're fully in the weight room. I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time on creating some elaborate warm-up routine at the beginning of thing or anything like that. I would just have some warm-up sets that are built into that first tricep. And then I would, depending on what your split is, I would have them, do some of the mobility and core exercises that maybe you would incorporate into a warm-up on like a Wednesday if you're doing a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday split. We're doing that on a Tuesday, Thursday if you're going to do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday split. And so, if you're doing 2 trisets and you're doing, 4 sets, 5 sets, like that's really going to stretch you as far as time goes. But if you do have any other time remaining, what I would do is just fill that with an AMRAP, as many rounds as possible in X amount of time, whether that's 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, if that's the case and you're kind of doing lower volume stuff, that's kind of what I would do to make the most use of my time. The other thing that I think is big is setting up as much of your weight room as you can beforehand as possible. And so like for me, when we have 16 different racks, like that can take a long time for me to do that if I'm going to go and change the J hooks to a certain level and raise the bars up for the kids so that they're not having to do it, to eliminate that time, putting med balls out, whatever it might be. What I'll do is I'll have the last class before the one that I'm about to do. So for football, that's first period for us, beginning of the day. So the 4th period class the day before, I will always have that class basically set up as much of the weight room as possible for the following day. So I'm not having to spend time having my kids do that. That's already done for them. The other thing too that I would do with that as well is have a set routine to it. So like, okay, third period always knows on this day we're going to set up for squat the next day. We're on this day we're going to set the J hooks up at this level for bench, the next day. Kind of creating a routine for it as much as possible, so you're not having to do a whole lot of work yourself, and you're also not asking your kids to spend a whole lot of time setting stuff up, and you can just get to train. Okay, so here are a couple different or a few different examples here of kind of a format that you could follow. So example A would be an option if you were in the weight room on Monday, Wednesday, Friday fully, and then you did your speed training stuff more on Tuesday, Thursday, but you still have enough space to incorporate some plyos that are paired with your main lifts. Then example B, and I'll give some more specific examples in a minute, but example B would be like if you're trying to combine sprinting with your typical weight room session. So in order to do that, you have to have a space to sprint that's close by, whether that is turf, track, basketball court, whatever it might be, and then going into your second main lift and a couple of auxiliaries after that. And then the third option would be if I was strictly just training all strength and power exercises, your typical or more traditional, what your more traditional weight room session would look like. And then in doing that on, either 3-day split, 4-day split, and then having that other day be your speed training sessions. So you can kind of see right here on the next slide of kind of how it would look with, some specific examples on there. So for example B, we'll kind of get into how you can make that work as far as going between doing a main lift in the weight room, finding space for a broad jump or whatever type of jump, and then utilizing space to go and then sprint as well. All right, so I know that this is something that a lot of strength coaches probably have had to think about before when it comes to implementing speed training, especially with the way that we as football coaches are wired, is that, and that is that there's not standing around on the field, and so with that in mind, like you want to do time sprints, you want to do it on a weekly basis, you want to make it part of your routine, but you don't want to have 60, 70, 80, 90, however many kids you have standing around if you only have one set of lasers. And so that's us. Like we have 60 to 70 kids. We've got one set of lasers. So we want to avoid too much standing around, but we also don't want to just give them activity for the sake of activity to create junk fatigue. We want to be efficient with our time, but we don't want to give them too much so that they're not fresh when it comes time for them to actually sprint. So there's kind of two options for how you can kind of cut down on the amount of kids that you have standing around waiting to actually run their time sprint. One that's super easy is just have two athletes sprint at a time and they're racing each other. You can have one of them that is within range of the lasers. So you just set up some cones that are, within whatever distance it is that you have that works for the lasers or the timing system that you have. And then you have another set of cones that's just outside of that. So they're starting side by side on the goal line, for example, if you're on the field and, let's say they're running a 20-yard build into a 10-yard fly. The one kid that is closest to the lasers or closest to the sideline, he's actually going to be timed, but he's racing the other kid at the same time. So the kid kind of has two different things externally to hopefully make him sprint as fast as possible. One, that he knows he's trying to get the best time that he possibly can. and 2, he's trying to beat the guy next to him. The other thing that you can do is you can put your sprints into what you call a speed or performance circuit. That could be 3 to 4 stations in a circuit. So an example of what that might look like, if you're inside, like we are right now, like we're fully inside, we're not even trying to devote entire days to going out onto the field, just with where we're at in our off-season program and just with how the weather is. So station 1 would be in the weight room, where you're doing some sort of dynamic effort lift, whether that's a full or a lower body lift. So that could be clean, jerk, snatch, Olympic variation, squats, or loaded jumps. And then if you want to, you can give them a second while they're in there too, depending on how many kids you have, where they're doing some sort of mobility exercise or something for ankle stiffness there. Then for station 2, so for us, we do that right outside the weight room on the track, where we'll do some sort of variation of a plyo, whether that's a jump variation or a med ball throw. And then station 3, that could be if you have the basketball court close by, could be you have a turf area, could even be if you have a hallway. It could also be you have your weight room, to where you have an open space of concrete where it's flat right outside of that, like kind of like an alleyway. Because that's also been a situation that I've been in before to use that. So you're kind of creating those 3 stations, and you're having kids do 1 set of each. So they're doing 1 set on cleans. All right, they do their mobility exercise. Okay, now I'm moving on to station 2. So this is kind of what it looks like when we display it for our kids. We do use Rat Coach in the weight room. And I know on this it says work for 2 minutes, but I won't even play it and go strictly by the timer. The way that we actually rotate the kids is we'll basically tell them, okay, you're not starting until you have X number at your station. That way you don't have a bunch of kids getting built up waiting around at 1. You're always going to end up having more kids standing around waiting for the time sprint, just because you can only do 1 at a time. But in order to kind of cut down on that, you kind of, depending on what your number of kids is, you set a number and say, okay, we're not starting at the next station until we have whatever that number is. For us, that's 8. So you get 8 kids that are in the weight room at their racks on clean. Okay, they all go. They finish around the same time. They go and wait at the door to the weight room before they go to their banded broad jump. Once the group ahead of them finishes, they go and rotate to their resisted sprint. So then now all those kids that are on power clean, they get all the bands. So you'd have 4 sets of them. Once those 4 sets of bands are filled up, where you've got 1 partner holding, 1 partner jumping, then they're good to go. So that's kind of how we do that. For us, with 60 kids, it takes about 24 minutes, which is what a 2-minute work period would be. But sometimes, it might get a little bit off here and there. That's why I don't actually go and play that timer. So the second option right here, or second example, would be if you're outside, like fully outside. So you'd have 1 station where it's time sprints. Station 2, again, could be your throw or jump variations. If you don't have an easy way to transport med balls outside or a place to store them, then it could just strictly be jump variations. And then you could have station 3, where you're doing some sort of an acceleration drill. So kind of like wall drills, but instead of using a wall, you're using the fence off to the side on the sideline. And then if you want to have a 4th station, or you need to because of your number of kids, you could have that be your mobility or ankle stiffness station right there, since that doesn't really require any equipment or anything like that. So kind of the next scenario, as far as being efficient with our time, would be if you're wanting to run or do time sprints during the season, but it doesn't make sense for you to do it during the school day for whatever reason, or for whatever reason you can't, or you don't have your athletes all together. Whatever the reason is, it just makes it more sense for you to do it at practice, or you need to do it at practice. So again, you want to do this and avoid too much standing around. You want to be efficient. You want to make sure the athletes are fresh, but you don't want to waste time either. So how we do this is we have our routine of our normal practice, weekly practice schedule. For us, we do this on Mondays, first thing. And when I say build off of what the kids know, like if you have a specific warm-up routine that you do on days that you run sprints during your off season or during your summer, just make that your warm-up for practice, whether the kids are in pads, shells, helmets, and shorts or not. Make it consistent so that they know, okay, every single Monday, this is what we're going to do. When it comes to being consistent, you just want to make sure that whatever it is that you do the first time, you're going to continue with that, so that when you're comparing data, like it's actually going to be consistent. So are you going to sprint in full pads if you practice in full pads on Monday? Are you just practicing in the helmets and shorts? You're going to have the kids take their helmets off and they're just running shorts? Or is it going to be where they're in shells, but they take their helmets off? Like whatever it is that you choose to do, just be consistent with it. The other thing that you can do to be more efficient that we do is we start practice with the first actual period being PAT field goal. It could be a different special teams unit. I wouldn't recommend it being kickoff or punt, just because those are going to be your units that require more sprinting when you're actually, doing the football part there. But what we do is we have our two deep for the PAT field goal teams start first on the sprints. So those kids go first. Like we talked about a few slides ago, we have them pair up to where they're against somebody of a similar speed and they're racing. So one kid is being timed. One kid is racing outside of the gate to where he's not being timed, but he's trying to beat the other guy. Then they go get back in line. They do it again and switch positions to where the other guy that wasn't timed, okay, now he's getting timed. We have all those kids that are on the 2 deep for PAT field goal. They run their sprints first, so that then as soon as they're done, they go to PAT field goal and they start practicing. The rest of the kids that aren't on PAT field goal, they then sprint. They do the same routine. Well, now instead of having those kids as they finish, because you might have like the first couple kids that finish, they're waiting on another 20, 30, 40 kids behind them. We have them just go ahead and transition to their individual position with their position coach. And once that position coach feels like he has enough kids to start running whatever pre-practice individual drills he wants to do, then they'll start. And then basically from that, once everyone's done, we go into, the next period, which would typically just be Indy, because people are already getting there anyways. So that's kind of how we do that, to be as efficient as possible and not add too much time to practice on a Monday. So now, the next thing, like I said earlier, talking about not spending a whole lot of time on warm-ups. If you're going to be sprinting longer distances, like it's kind of unavoidable that you're going to need to do that in order to, prevent, hamstring strains, hip flexor strains, things like that. But you still want to reduce the amount of time that you spend on that, since your time is your main limitation. So what we do is we complete as much of our warm-up as possible in a grid formation. So if you can't visualize what I'm talking about, just think your pregame stretch lines, where you've got 8 lines, 10 lines, whatever it is, kids all across the 50, and then, every 5 yards filled in behind them. So we do as much as we possibly can just in place with each person in their line every 5 yards as possible, instead of going and getting a line of 10 kids waiting behind the goal line, going one at a time. We do as much as we can while they're just in place. So right here would be an example of kind of a general warm up that we would do at the beginning. So you can see right there on 1 through 7. That's something that we would do just about every single day. Then where it says Tuesday, that would be some stuff that we would do that's specific to that day. But again, we're still doing it in a grid formation. So we're doing the pogo hops forward for 5 yards on one leg. We're doing or 10 yards, depending on which one we're doing. It's not until we get to those last two that we finally collapse the lines and we do the power skip and we do the sprints when we actually have, if it's 10 kids on line, 9 of them standing there and 1 kid actually working. So then next slide would just be different examples of things that we would do on a specific day. So these were actually from like our mat drills last year where we went Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So that's why it says Wednesday and Thursday on there. But like you can see, like there's only, up to 4 or 5 different things that we're doing where we're having a whole lot of standing around and 1 kid actually moving. So another big thing that is something that, has just always drove me crazy in the past. And I know for a lot of strength coaches, it's probably might just be, nothing crazy, pretty simple. But if you have athletes that spend too much time trying to read percentage charts or reading their training card, or if you're asking them to write their weights down, that could be something that adds a lot of time or slows them down. So plenty of the kids have, they struggle enough with just figuring out how much weight they're actually lifting or how much weight they actually have on the bar at the same time. So if you're not already doing this, I would give them their exact weights instead of a percentage. So when you create your sheets, it's actually going and it's estimating or based off of their, estimated 1 rep max. It's going and it's giving them their specific numbers instead of trying to look at a percentage chart, figuring out, okay, what's 80% of 300 or whatever it might be. If you don't already know how to do a bunch of different formulas and functions in Excel, M-Round is your friend. That way it can get those numbers to every 5 pounds instead of having like 98 on there. And then the kid's mind is just completely blown because he doesn't know whether to do 95 or 100. So the other thing I would do too is not try to give them too many numbers. So just pick 2 of your main lifts, maybe 3, where you're giving them specific numbers for them to be following. I know this is something that a lot of people struggle with is like, okay, we're going to go off of percentages for our main list, but we still want the kids to be pushing themselves on these other exercises. So for assistance exercises, to make it more simple, or anything where you're doing like a repeat effort for a higher number of reps, or you're trying to accumulate volume. You can have your players on the first week of whatever block you're on, have them work to a 6, an 8, or even a 10 rep max, and they're going to record their weight. So then the following week, instead of giving them a whole chart that has, okay, on set 1, you're going to do this weight, set 2, you're going to do this weight, just give them their numbers. Say, hey, this is your number to beat. So your goal is basically to work up past that 6 rep max, that 8 rep max, that 10 rep max by the time they get to their last set. Another way you can do it too is, okay, if we did a 6 rep max on week 1, okay, week 2, now we're going to do the 6 rep max times 8. Okay, then we're going to try to do the 8 rep max times 10. We're going to do the 10 rep max times 12, and so on and so forth there. So when it comes to both time and technology, not everybody has access to things like Team Builder or some of these other platforms where the kids kind of they'll enter their data on an iPad and it'll give them their estimated 1 rep max, their weights, all that type of stuff. So what I do is I use magnetic hooks where you just get them off of Amazon for real cheap. I have a clipboard at every single rack. Every single clipboard has their sheet with their prescribed weights and a pin attached to it. And then on certain days, the kids will be responsible for recording what their weight is on their last set when I tell them to. So they don't have to go and come up and tell me. They don't have to go and input it into a computer or an iPad somewhere. They're just going to write it down right there at that rack. Save some time, save some travel throughout the room. Now, it does require more work on my part to then go in and look through it and go and input it myself. But as far as being efficient, that's what I found works well for me. Even if you're not using the clipboard, so like you can see right there, if you just use the magnet part and just put magnets or use magnets to put those sheets up there, that'll save you a ton of time when it comes to setting up the room ahead of time, instead of trying to go and tape everything. So sorry, going back. So like there's just your standard chart that has sets 1 through 5 of what weight they're going to be doing with 60 names on it. So that's how many kids we got. But that can, be kind of difficult to read. So, at certain times I'll do it, where I have a spreadsheet that I'll do where it'll automatically, create a sheet for each individual rack. So I'll just enter in the names and what their, 1 rep maxes or estimated 1 rep maxes are, and it'll spit this out for me. Even have it color coded, since we're following rack coach, and that'll tell them, what color they're following on the screen as far as what exercise they should be doing. So the next big one would be your space and equipment that would limit you a lot. So I've been in a situation before where I've only had 6 racks, 6 platforms. They're not really platforms, but just they were areas where you had a barbell, you had a weight tree, and we would treat them like a platform. 6 benches, 12 bars, and then 1 rack of dumbbells, and that was for 35 athletes. So in that specific situation, what I would do is I would have 1 barbell exercise in the rack. In the middle, between the rack and the platform area, they're doing 1 body weight exercise, or if you have access to them, they could do like some sort of banded exercise, and then they're doing another barbell exercise that's on that platform area. If you want to utilize the dumbbells, if you have that many kids and only 1 rack, the best thing you could probably do is just use it as a station. So at the end, have like 3 stations where one's doing something with the barbell, one's body weight, one's going over the dumbbell rack, and they're moving through it as fast as they can. So if you have a limited number of racks like this, what I would do is I would have 5 to 6 athletes to a rack. And kind of talking about the trisets from earlier, all main exercises would be paired with 2 others for a triset. So you can see right there, you've got a very clear rotation, where you're going from spot to bench, rest, face pulls, rest, now bent over row. And as best as you can, I would even do it where the flow of all the exercises works in the same direction. So, so when I put the order on the board or on the screen, it's always going to be going from the rack to the outside or from the rack to the inside of the room, depending just on what your layout is. So when it comes to limitations on space and equipment for speed or plyo training, there's a lot of things that you can do to be creative. So for us, we don't have that many sleds. And like I said, the field is really far away from us, so it didn't really make sense for us to use sleds. So what we did is we pull chains. So fortunately, we already had a ton of different chains there, and I'm talking about like the really heavy duty chains, where they're 30, 35, 40 pounds for each one altogether. And basically what we do is loop 1 toe strap through them, clip that loop to the lifting belt, or if it's open-ended on the other side, you have 1 clip that's going onto the chain, 1 clip that's going on the belt, and then now we're pulling the chains. And you can do that like on our indoor track. It doesn't tear up the flooring or hurt it or anything like that. With the type of flooring we have, you can do it outside on concrete. If you don't have a turf area, or you don't have access to being able to get to the field close by. And it's much cheaper than purchasing some new sleds and purchasing new weights just for that. Also, if you're doing one of those performance circuits and you're outside and you can't carry your plyo boxes out there, or your field is really far away, or you don't have like that turf area, you can do use the bench on the sideline. It's not perfect or anything, but you can do different variations of depth drops. You can do depth jumps. You can do single leg jumps using that, and that can be one of your stations as well. So right here, this just showing us using those chains and dragging those right there, where you can see we actually used old TRX straps to kind of make our little makeshift strap right there. We have since upgraded, fortunately, but that's kind of what we had to do to get it done last year. The next question would be, okay, well, what if your total number of athletes exceeds 5 to 6 athletes to a rack? So for us, like that's the case when we have our ninth graders, or we have all 9 through 12 all together. So during the summer, we have them work out at the same time as our varsity because we don't have a separate ninth grade staff. But we do keep them separate, and they utilize the track and the court and the Coliseum as much as possible while the varsity is inside the weight room lifting. And so what that kind of looks like, what we're doing on the track with that space that we have, or what we're doing on the court, is we're using PVC pipes, tees to clean. We have old kettlebells, we have old dumbbells from before we got the power blocks, and we have old plates, and they'll use those for weights. We'll use a lot of tempo. So like, a tempo goblet squat, tempo RDL, tempo push-ups, like a lot of different things that are going to challenge most of them that have really low level of relative strength. We'll use lots of different body weight exercises. We'll do jumps and sprints, and we'll still have them use the weight room. But what we'll do is we'll have at certain parts of the workout, we'll have a few racks that are open, and like that'll be a station for them where they're going in the weight room and now they're doing exercises on the last 2 racks at the end of the room with however many kids it is, 8, 10, 12, and they're doing specific things that they can't accomplish with just what they have outside the weight room. And what I would say too is, like, for your kids that truly are so advanced for a ninth grader that you feel like you need them to be doing some of the same stuff as the varsity, well, then put them with the varsity, and then they can play with the ninth grade if you want them to. But as far as training goes, that's what I would do. So then during the season, what we do is we have our ninth grade lift separate again, but we have them lift second after varsity lift first. So we have 90-minute periods. So our varsity will lift first, then the second half of the time they'll do meetings or they'll watch film. So while the ninth grade is waiting, they'll be doing a performance circuit, they'll be doing mobility, or they might be watching film themselves while they're waiting on varsity to finish. All right, so last area of limitations that we'll talk about here is technology. So just a disclaimer here, these alternatives that I'm going to throw out there, I know they are not perfect. I know they're not perfect replacements. I know that they can't do everything that technology can, but they are better than nothing, and they help you accomplish these 3 goals below, which are some of the purposes of what you are using technology for in the first place. So you can use these things to assess progress, or most of the things I'm going to talk about. You can use them to drive competition, and you can use them to motivate athletes more than if you just didn't do them at all. So typically when I'm talking about technology, I'm talking about timing systems, jump mats or sensors, or VBT. So I know it's not necessarily cool anymore, but if you don't have a timing system, there's nothing wrong with hand timing. It still is going to provide athletes with a benchmark for them to be able to assess their progress moving forward, give them something to strive for. As long as you communicate with them that it's not going to be as accurate as laser timing would be, and it's going and a laser would give them slower times, like it's fine. It can't the downsides are it's not as accurate, and you're not going to be able to calculate a speed in miles per hour very accurately at all. If you're trying to do a fly 10, like it's just not going to work. You're not going to be able to see exactly when a kid crosses 20 yards and then 30 yards, or 30 yards and 40 yards, whatever that distance is. But another option that you do have that I have used a lot before we got our timing system is video timing. I've used an app called Sprint Timer before. Like I said, it's not perfect, but it does provide you with more accurate data by being able to go and review the video. If you're running a 20-yard build into a 10-yard fly, you can see exactly when the kid crosses 20 yards with a time that's basically overlaid over that video, and then see exactly when he crosses 30 yards. You can then take that time, input it into Sheets or Excel, and then it'll spit out your miles per hour for you. The issue with doing this is that it's difficult to provide immediate feedback because you have to go back and watch the video. You have to zero the timer when they cross whatever point and look at it. And that takes a minute to do for each one. So you can't just go out and yell, oh, you ran 19 miles per hour. You ran 18.5. You ran 20.5. And you can't yell out the miles per hour if you're hand timing, but you can yell out a time. And there is power in the kids hearing a time and hearing it in front of the rest of their teammates knowing exactly what they ran as well. What I would do if I was using video timing and I did not have a timing system is, if possible, I would have two coaches. I would have one using the video timing, the Sprint Timer app, and I would have one doing a hand time. That way you can still yell out what their time was, if it's a 0 to 40 yard sprint, or let's say it's a 0 to 10 yard sprint, whatever it is, you can yell out that time for them. They know exactly what they got. They know where they stand in relation to the guy that just went before them, guy that just went after them, so on and so forth. But then you can take the second guy that is using video timing, you can go back in and pull the times later, put them on a leaderboard, and that can be like the official times. That's kind of similar to, when you see at the NFL Combine, you have your unofficial time, then later they have your official time. Next thing you can do is have them race and chase, either or, as much as you possibly can. There's going to be competition every single rep, so there's a clear winner or loser. Did you get caught, or did you catch the guy ahead of you? You can do this inside in short distances. You can do it outside at longer distances. You can vary their starting positions, having them do a lateral start, having them start with their chest down, having them have their chest up and they roll over. You got a lot of different options there. You can have them do a linear sprint where they're just running straight forward for whatever distance, or you can do it in curve sprints. If you're going to do this, what I would suggest doing is that you find a system for splitting your team into groups. You can do it by top speed or fastest times to make sure that you have even matchups. So you might have 4 groups where you've got your upper 25%, then you've got your upper middle, you got your lower middle, and then you got your bottom 25%. So then that way, when you're going and you're doing this as part of your speed training, you have kids that are actually going to be matched up with one another evenly. So how I accomplish this is we use these wristbands in the weight room for the kids to remember what their color is when they're following along on Rat Coach, so they're already used to it. So then when I create our quote unquote speed groups, each speed group has a color. So then if we get to the part of our speed session where we're doing what we call cat and mouse, which is just us, having one kid chase the other, they know, okay, all yellow, y'all are going to get over here in this line. So now the first 2 kids, first 2 yellows are going, first 2 oranges are going, first 2 blues are going, first 2 greens are going. And those are all going to be even matchups with each pair, even though you might have orange that's your fastest kids and green that's your slowest kids going at the same time. So the next thing would be if you don't have a jump mat or you don't have a jump sensor, I think box jumps are great because they're so easily measurable. If you have stackable plyo boxes at different heights, it's a very easy way for you to drive intent and motivate your kids. So you can write down the height of each box for kids to see if it's not already there. Kids like them. They'll see videos on social media, whatever athlete doing whatever height box jump, and they think it's really cool, and they're going to feel really cool doing it themselves. It's an external stimulus that's going to drive intent for them, and they can they can perform a lot of different variations. So they can do seated, they can do standing, they can do an approach jump, a depth jump, weighted jumps, whatever it is. So that way you're still measuring box jumps, but you're just doing a lot of different variations throughout the year. That way, they're not getting too bored with it. You've got broad jumps. Again, those are easily measurable. Just put measuring tape down. You're giving them something where there's a clear external stimulus there. Hey, I've got to go and I've got to jump to 8 feet, to 9 feet, to 10 feet, whatever it might be. And again, they can perform a lot of different variations. They can do seated, standing, double, triple, single leg, whatever it might be. So right here is just an example of like me posting our leaderboard for box jumps. So you can see like the kids do their box jumps, whatever the highest height was that they got to, they can see what the numbers are. They total it up. They write it down on a piece. They write it down on a chart, and then I go in and input it later. Another option that you have, if you don't have plyo boxes, is you can just put tape up on the walls at different heights. So you could have 8 foot, 8.5 foot, 9 foot, 10 foot, whatever it is, whatever increments you want to do, where they're going to just jump and they're going to stand next to the wall. They're going to jump. They're going to jump as high as they can and try to touch that piece of tape. Again, it's giving them an external stimulus. It doesn't require any equipment. And you can do it almost anywhere indoors. It's not perfect, but again, it is better than just saying, hey, do a vertical jump, where it's very clear if this kid is always consistently touching 9.5 feet, and then okay, today he's jumping and it's 8.5. All right, well, either he's hurt, he's super fatigued, or he ain't trying. The last one would be really creative here, but it still is giving them that external stimulus, and it's something that they enjoy, and that would be going and trying to jump up and dunk on basketball rolls. So if you have access to a gym that's close by your weight room, you can lower those as you need to, or you could have one that's in 10 foot, one that's at 8 foot, or one that's at 9, one that's at 8, whatever it is that you want to do. You can give them a little mini basketball goal. Not basketball goal, little mini basketball to dunk if you want to. And you can give them the parameters. Hey, you're going to jump off of one leg. Okay, you're going to jump off the right leg this time. Jump off the left leg this time. Jump off both legs. And again, like you're giving them something that's very clear and tangible that I've got to reach for. I've got to jump up and touch this goal. I've got to get my hand up over this rim. And again, like just like box jumps, like kids like this. What kid doesn't feel cool going and dunking on a basketball goal? So then lastly here, if I don't have VBT, but you still want to make sure that you're getting the most out of your power development exercises, you can try to come up with some descriptive external cues. So if you have, your old school iron plates that aren't rubber coated, you can have them basically tell them, hey, you want to make the plates shake. You are trying to make the plates clang. You want to be able to hear that sound. It could also be like the clicking of the bar. So for us, like on our trap bars, like if you're moving the bar fast enough, like you can very clearly hear this clicking sound between the inside ring of the plate and then the sleeve of the barbell. You want to use exercises that they can't cheat. And I know it might seem intuitive, but you want to do it more than just one time per week. So like, don't just do, okay, Monday is our clean day, and then we don't do anything else explosive again for the rest of the week. So you've got all those options there as well, where in order for them to do it correctly, it's kind of hard for them to cheat it. And you can give them specific parameters, like on high pull. Hey, the bar's got to at least get up to this height, whether that's sternum, shoulder height, chest, whatever it is that you tell them. And then lastly, if you're going to do dynamic effort squat or bench, my suggestion would be that you give it a descriptive name so that they understand I'm not trying to just go and load up the heaviest weight I can. Because even if you give them a specific number, you know, they're still going to try to, they're still going to sometimes not do what they're supposed to do, surprisingly enough. And they won't be getting the stimulus that they're supposed to be. So you can call it speed bench, speed squats, explosive squats, something like that. And just from my own personal experience, I would not recommend it for box squats, just because a lot of times the kids are like, okay, on box squats, I can just do more weight. So I'm just going to do as much as I possibly can instead of focusing on what the actual intention of the exercise is, which is moving the bar as explosively as possible. So I know that was a lot there. Kind of went a little bit longer than I was planning to. But if anybody has any questions or even ideas for me that, you know, maybe you thought of something that I haven't to work more efficiently, would love to hear them. So I appreciate the opportunity here, Coach.
Yeah, that was great, man. I think that's the stuff that people can pick up on that's realistic. I mean, I love doing these things, and I think they can all be helpful, but some are a little more practical than others. And I thought that was really practical, you know, something you could do. So appreciate you taking the time to share, man. That was great.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me again.
Yeah. Yeah. Take care, Coach.
All right. Thank you.
See you.